So we always start, most people have some sort of blood work that they've done fairly recently. So we often have them send us anything that they already have. Then if based upon, their history and their symptoms and what they're dealing with and what their health goals are, if there's additional labs that we need, we'll have them send out for labs. And it could be regular general blood work, or it could be more specific things like different hormone testing or foods.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Trustcasting Podcast, where experts become authorities. I'm Zane Myers, your host. Today, I'm speaking with another remarkable guest who's built incredible trust with their clients. Let's dive right in. Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Holistic Entrepreneur. And today we're happy to have Dr. Danielle Zanzarov. Did I butcher that?
No, you did it perfect.
Okay. And she runs a business called South Bay Wellness. And then she has some interesting things on there. And we'll talk about that, the True Wellness Checklist and the True Wellness Framework. And so before we got on, I asked you a question about your location, and you said we're pretty much all virtual. So how does that work?
How does that work? Well, I'll tell you a little bit of background. So in our family here, we believe big in dreams and fulfilling our dreams. And so, for years, I had a practice on Long Island for 15 years. And so we had a general brick and mortar for that time. And as my kids grew, they came across, I don't know how it happened, started with a Groupon, but they started these passions for horseback riding and motocross. And the next thing you know, Long Island was not the best place for us to live anymore. So we up and rerouted to Texas. And as a result, we moved the practice entirely virtual. So this happened around the COVID time. So the good news is we had some clients we already worked with virtually. And so we transitioned over at that.
So that was a good time, I would think. If you're going to do something like that, then people were more amenable, or, would think about that more, as opposed to nobody wanted to go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for the longest time too, right? So I had my own practice, but my husband has a regular corporate job. And so he had to be in the office all the time. And as that kind of opened up and he didn't need to be in the office anymore, so did the opportunity to go ahead and relocate to help the kids pursue their dreams.
So how was that? How was the move? So culture shock? I mean, going from New York to Texas, it's a totally, everything about it is completely different.
It is. It's pretty awesome though. I've got to tell you, we lived on Long Island, which is your standard, suburbia, suburb of the city where everyone's on top of each other and next to each other. And, now we're literally in the middle of nowhere where we have to plan our grocery trips to the Dallas area to get any kind of real good, healthy food. So in that respect, it is a little bit of a culture shock, but the ability to have just sort of that expansiveness and that space is wonderful. And North Texas here it's beautiful in its own right, minus the storms and tornado warnings.
Yeah.
The wide open country and the absolutely beautiful skies. It's a reminder all the time that God is good.
So how far out of Dallas are you?
We're about an hour or so out of Dallas, depending on, where exactly it is that you're going.
Yeah. So I have a lot of family in Dallas Fort Worth area, and my daughter lives in Austin, and my grandkids. Anyway, but I digress. So tell me, how did you get into being in medicine, in holistic health? How did that all transpire? What's the history there?
Oh, that's a great question. So, when I was a little girl, I spent a whole lot of time in Dr. Platnick's office. I was always there a lot of the time, and I'd go in, I'd, get my nebulizer treatment. They were always coming after me with that, that steroid injection for my rear end. I was always running to hide underneath the table. And when I went off to college, that's when all the digestive issues started. And I remember, I was a full-time college student over at Columbia. We didn't come from a family of means, so I had to work my way while I was in college. And I started to get to the point where I was waking up every morning just completely nauseated. And I went to campus health services and they wanted to send me for all these tests. And I'm looking at these people, I'm like, I don't have time for all of this testing and all of this stuff. And in the end, the doctor handed me a prescription and he's like, here, you're just going to just take this. It'll all be fine. And I was like, okay, well, how long do I take it for? I mean, when I was young, Dr. Platnick would usually give me that pink bubblegum stuff, last a few days, and then I'd be good to go. So he's like, oh no, you're just gonna take this, like, forever.
This is it.
This is it. And the little warning light went off in my head, like, okay, this doesn't make sense. There's something wrong here. And so began my inquiry into, the human body and real health. And then, life has its way of bringing you along the journey, where it wants you to be. And so there were people in my life who I then began to interact with who were also on this journey. I worked, one of my part-time jobs during college was I worked renting apartments in New York City. And so it was me and the real estate agent. We sat in this apartment for, they had a couple of apartment buildings on the block and we'd have to show the apartments and such. And she was on her own health journey. And that made a tremendous impact. It was the first time too, I had gotten curious about things outside of the normal conventional, right? Like I could remember she gave me the book, The Celestine Prophecies, and I started to read that and I was like, oh my God, there's a whole world out there that I'm not even aware of. And so then began the rest of the journey. When right after I graduated from college, my grandmother started to get really sick. Well, actually, she didn't start. It had been happening for years and years and years before that. But it just gotten to the point where I remembered there was one day I went to go visit her and I was sitting at her dining room table and she comes in and she puts down this tray of cookies on the table. And as she stood up, her entire body shook. And I had never seen anything like that. And in that moment, I could see from where I was sitting at that dining room table, I could see diagonal to the kitchen counter. And I could see all of the pill bottles lined up. Now, mind you, I heard my mom and my aunt talking earlier that day, and they were talking about how all of her tests were great and everything was wonderful. And I'm sitting there and the light bulb goes off again. And I said, not a single one of those things are actually helping her. And I remember I left her house that night and I wanted to do, whatever I could to help my grandmother. Wasn't just about my stomach or this or that anymore, because that wasn't as important to me as helping my grandmother. And she was, she was willing. She wanted to, the more I would learn, back in the days where we used books and library card catalogs and stuff, the more that I would learn, I'd reach out to her and I'd say, all right, man, hey, I want you to try this and I want you to do that. But, it was all too little too late.
Yep.
And as a result of that, I remember I was sitting on the bus on the way back to Long Island, where my grandparents, they had just moved from Brooklyn to Long Island. They were going to enjoy their retirement. And I just decided at that point that I wasn't going to stand for this kind of suffering, right? That something had to be different. I had already seen, through the glimpses of what I was learning, that this is what was occurring. And so that was really the beginning of my journey.
So, did you finish your undergraduate degree and then you went on to, so tell me about your credentials for natural health.
Yes. Well, I've got a lot of credentials. They're not all natural health because I still, immediately when I had graduated from college, I went into the teaching profession and I was a teacher. I'm still a teacher, right? The definition of doctor is teacher. Okay. And then, of course, I pursued an MBA and I did all of these different things as well. But so a little bit about my background. As I started to learn more and more, I realized that the traditional medical model in terms of helping people with their health wasn't the direction that I wanted to go. Right. Because now I'm recognizing that there's so much more to this amazing thing we call the human body. And that if we're just kind of covering things up and not paying attention to all the intricacies, we're kind of missing the boat. And so I began my studies in nutrition, and that led me to getting a PhD in natural medicine. And then further, the whole world of functional medicine began to open up as well. And that was my next pathway, because this was exactly what I was talking about to all of my clients at the time. Hey, we've got to get to the underlying root cause of what's happening for you. And so then I went out and pursued another master's degree in human nutrition and functional medicine as well. So now I've been in practice for over 17 years now. Gosh,
Wow.
Still 21, by the way.
So tell me about the True Wellness Checklist, because that kind of caught my attention, and that's something that, tell me how that works, and what are there's 10 high impact habits on there. What are the high impact habits?
Yes. Well, to start with, so the True Wellness Checklist, it really comes from the True Wellness framework. So one of the things that I quickly learned in practice, I think our practices, our businesses, they all go through an evolution, and we're always taking these things, refining them, making it better. And I said to myself, I need to put this into a very clear, concrete, methodology or framework that people can really understand. Because a lot of times people are used to they're used to reaching out to a healthcare practitioner. They're used to getting a little bit of advice. Maybe they move forward with it. Maybe they don't. And a lot of times they end up just stuck. And a lot of times what happens too is the whole person isn't really addressed. And what I've learned in my years of practice is that if we are just focusing on the symptoms, and we're not going anywhere, right? We're just kind of putting Band-Aids on those different things. And so I sat down and I said, how do I bring all the different things that we do in practice together? Because we do things pretty differently than most practices. When we work with our clients, it is about educating them, having them understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it. It's about having the support. I work with our clients one-on-one clinically. We always have a health coach team that meets with our clients on a regular basis as well. And then we have, we meet as a community, and we have a lot of focus and emphasis, not just on the physical body and physical symptoms, but all the other stuff that goes along with it. Right. So the True Wellness framework itself, it starts with the letter T, right? And that T is for tuning into your body. So think about it. Most of us, we're kind of like heads that are on top of a body walking around, and we have no connection. But if we're truly going to restore our health for the long term, then we've got to get back into our bodies, so to speak, and really start to tune in. I always say, everything that you're experiencing, there's signals from your body. It's like, knock, knock, I need some help. And sometimes those signals are small. It's like, it's throwing little pebbles at you. But over time, if you don't respond to the little pebbles, now you're getting bricks and boulders thrown at you. So the first step there is really tuning in and recognizing what it is that your body's signals are. And then the U, right? The U is really, the R comes after T. So the R, so in the True Wellness framework now is really about, reconnecting and rebalancing. So you're reconnecting with your body, you're rebalancing, you're getting back into those natural, normal rhythms that your body has. So that can be from sleep schedules, that could be towards lifestyle habits, that could be any one of those different pieces there. And then we also move to the real meat and bones, which is the U, in uncovering the underlying root causes. right? And this is where we dive in. I always say, our symptoms they're just the tip of the iceberg, but it's really what's happening underneath that is what needs to be addressed. So just because we have a headache doesn't mean that we need to, fix our head. That headache can be stemming from something that's going on internally inside the body. And so we've got to look underneath that tip of the iceberg, because an iceberg is, right? The little tip is here and then it comes all the way out. The Titanic knew it all too well because they only looked at the tip. They didn't see what was going on underneath. So that's the next step, looking at what are those underlying things. So what's happening with hormone imbalances, inflammation in the body, hidden infections, even, dental infections show up as being a really big deal for people. And then we have our E, which is embrace and empower mindset. So I always say to our clients, you can have the healthiest diet. You can be exercising every single day. You can be, outside, standing in the sun, getting grounded and taking in the morning sunlight, or doing your cold baths. But if you're chronically running around stressed out, or if you're constantly in a negative mindset, then even if we move a little bit further along your pathway and your health journey, at some point, if the mindset isn't where it needs to be, then what happens is people self-sabotage, right? So you see it. It's like an epidemic. Yep. People lose weight and then they gain all the weight back, right? Or they do well for a while and then they shift. And so all of those pieces are really key and critical. And your question about the checklist is really about, okay, so how do we take some of the key components in here and actually make them easy, absorbable, and, get people started on that journey at the practical level, right?
So give me some examples of things that are in the checklist. So if I get this checklist, I can go through it and then immediately apply it. Or is that
absolutely. So you can get the checklist, right? It's at www.drdee.com/checklist. So that's where you can find it. And it's got simple tools on there. So things like, managing your sleep schedule, having hydration first thing in the morning when you wake up, having movement as part of your day, focusing on breathing, right? All of those things that can bring our body right back into that place of, I don't want to just say homeostasis, right? But that place of calmness and centeredness within the body. And the key piece is, okay, the checklist is helpful. It's going to get people started on their journey, right? If they're dealing with severe issues or things like that, it is not the end all be all, but you've got to start somewhere. And you've got to bring in that consistency to where you're starting as well.
So I always try to take something away from these that I can personally use. I have different things that I've taken. Like one guy told me, he said was to stand on one foot. As you get older, your balance starts to fade. He says just do this one thing and it will help you. He says stand on one foot if you use electric toothbrush for the first minute and then stand on the other foot for the next minute. And I've incorporated that for a number of months, and it has improved my balance. It's just this little small exercise. So tell me something that you'd recommend that someone could incorporate into their daily routine that would help them to live a more healthful life.
Yeah. So I think, one of my personal favorite things to do, and when I do this, the days go really well. When I don't do it, I really, really miss it, right? I can feel the difference. And that is getting outside first thing in the morning, barefoot on the ground. And the reason being, number one, you're releasing the static charge, okay? Because we are living in an environment these days that, we're kind of in toxic overload if we're talking about electromagnetic frequencies and all of those different things. Even our homes where they're technically grounded, they're usually sitting on top of rebar and cement and all of those things. And you'd be surprised, like most people, like if you ask them when the last time their feet touched the bare ground, it's like months. And that static charge, as you may have seen the research on grounding and its effect on the body and the inflammation and how the negative ions impact the body. But that one thing can bring your body back into a space of balance. But the other thing about it too is not only are you resetting, right, your circadian rhythm because you're outside, you're in the light. Like here we are, we're sitting on a computer screen. I don't know about you, but by the end of the day, usually I don't know where my glasses are. They were right here, but I usually have my glasses on, my blue light glasses when I'm on the screen as often as possible, because when I'm not, it's like it's a different world. So really getting connected to that real natural light is another important piece that happens there. And the third thing that happens from this one exercise, right? This one thing to take on and do every day is you're spending a couple of seconds, if it has to be, minutes, even better, where you're breathing, you're present, you're in the current moment. And I find, so a lot of our clients, they're women in their midlife, they're successful, they're really busy, they're on the go all the time. They're doing a billion different things. And the amount of opportunities during their day that they take to just be is few and far between. And so this just that little one thing can change so much.
So tell me if so do you, you said women, are most of your patients women, or is it kind of a mix from men to women?
We have men and women. A large majority of our clientele are women though.
So tell me if I'm a prospective patient, so how would I find you and why would I find you? So I was exhibiting whatever kind of symptoms. How do most people find you?
Yeah. So a lot of the times, well, there's a couple different ways, right? Word of mouth is one way that our clients find us. So a lot of our clients have friends or things like that. And so they give us referrals. That is a key component. But also, we're on the internet. You'll see. So part of the transition from being a brick and mortar where we're kind of, you get phone calls because you're the office down the street, so to speak. That doesn't happen anymore because we don't have that brick and mortar. So a lot of what we're doing now, what we're starting to do is have more of that online presence. So a lot of clients will, they'll find us through either the True Wellness podcast that I run, or, we've moved from just using South Bay Wellness, and we're using Dr. D as well as part of our, our personal media platform. So that's another way that they find us. And it's really just through those different connections that people find us. When women come to us, they're typically dealing with a variety of different symptoms. Many of them, just given the fact that we're middle age, are in that perimenopausal, menopausal stage. And so there's a lot of hormone imbalance stuff that's taking place. We see a lot of clients with thyroid issues and digestive issues and such. And, dissatisfaction essentially with their bodies, the weight gain, the bloating, those kinds of things, the fatigue, that's a really, really big one that I'd say, 95% of our clients come in with. That's what they're starting with as their symptoms.
So do you generally, if you have a new client come in, do you have them run blood work with the local lab and then send you results? Is that one of the...
So it depends. So now that we're virtual, it's a game change again. So there's different states that have different capabilities and different ways that that think different things that are permitted within those states. So I know a lot of functional medicine practitioners rely very heavily on lab work. And, we've had clients who have come in who have worked with functional medicine practitioners before, and they've spent in the thousands of dollars in terms of lab work. I take a little bit more of a conservative approach. For me, if I see a direction that we can head in, that we can get some results, okay, then we don't necessarily need to start by spending thousands of dollars in lab work. It may not even be necessary. So we always start, most people have some sort of blood work that they've done fairly recently. So we often have them send us anything that they already have. Then if based upon, their history and their symptoms and what they're dealing with and what their health goals are, if there's additional labs that we need, we'll have them send out for for labs. And it could be regular general blood work, or it could be more specific things like different hormone testing or food sensitivity testing or things like that. So it really is a case by case basis. I don't subscribe to the one size fits all model. So our clients really have an individual journey that's designed specifically for them. So everyone doesn't come into our programs and all go through the same program doing the same thing. I mean, quite frankly, that's like if we all walked around with the same eyeglass prescription. We're not all going to be able to see. So it's no different for our clientele. So each person's journey is a little bit different based upon what their needs are. Right? We have systems and structures like the True Wellness Framework. We have a curriculum. We want our clients to be educated and empowered, but the nuances are also different. The other thing that I'll say to you that's pretty distinctive is I am one of the few highly trained kinesiologists in the country that practices a modality called quantum reflex analysis. And the beauty of that is we can see things through a different lens. So we don't have to just, the reason I became a practitioner of QRA is because, when I was first starting out in practice 17 years ago, and I've been practicing QRA for over 15 years now. But when I first started out, I was like, well, okay, so I know my client can benefit from vitamin D, but how do I know exactly how much vitamin D their body specifically needs, right? Or, you could open up a book, then you look up any symptom and it'll give you a list of herbs and supplements and all those things that could be helpful for that. For me, that wasn't enough. I needed to be able to pinpoint exactly what it was that somebody was going to need. This is like, I like to be effective and efficient, right? So that's a tool in our tool chest that we use often. So we're not.
So tell me, how do you do quantum reflex analysis? How do you do it? And then how do you do it remotely? It sounds like something that you need to see.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes. So kinesiologic testing is often done in person, but it doesn't have to be, right? You see, what happens is you can, using a photograph, you can capture whatever it is that's happening in that moment. Now, we can't use like the fancy filters that people use these days or things like that. So we don't have our clients use them, but using that, we can do the same kind of testing that we do in person in office. And it's truly, it's simply extraordinary.
So describe one of the tests. Can I do one of the tests right now? Quantum reflex analysis?
No, it's not something that you can specifically do. It is. So we go through all the different organs, glands, and systems of the body using really acupuncture points that are associated with those different organs, glands, and systems of the body. And we're looking to see like, okay, so are your cells operating vibrantly and really healthy and strong, or are they kind of like limping along? And we measure the body's response to that. And then the next question comes to, okay, well, what is it that the body needs to get back to that space where it is vibrant and healthy and what we call the 0 point, right? Where everything is kind of perfect. It's what we always attain to, but it's not something we're typically at that point. And so that's what we're looking for as we're putting different protocols and stuff together.
So, so if I came into your office on a typical first, or I'd come into your virtual office on a typical first visit, what would I expect to have happen?
Yeah. So when people come in, so typically we've gone through a little bit of a process before they've come in, right? They've gotten some education about our practice and our processes. They're understanding about our curriculum and the way that our community works and how we bring all those different things together. So we've usually sat down and had at least one conversation to talk about, what you're dealing with and what your symptoms are. It's what we call our evaluation. And then at that point, if we've decided, like I've decided I can help you, you've decided, yes, this feels like the perfect fit for me, and we begin a program with you, then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through your entire health history. So you and I are going to sit down together. on Zoom like this. And we're going to start with, mom's health when she was pregnant with you. Were you a vaginal birth? Were you a C-section? Were you breastfed? What was the environment that you grew up in? And we're just going to go all the way down and through your timeline, right? We're also going to talk about what's happening for you in your life, because, our health is not in isolation from everything else that's going on in our life. The environment that you're living in, your mindset, all the things that we just spoke about. So that we're going to go through all of that. And then from there, I kind of take a step back, go through all of those notes, go through all of the other information that we have. So if you have lab work or things like that, and then I start working on what it is that your protocol is specifically going to be going forward. And then at that point, we always started get started on dietary changes and things like that right off the bat as well.
Yeah, that's always an effective remedy for many illnesses. But you're right about all the other attitudinal. Is that a good word? I'm not sure. It describes the situation.
But I understand what you're saying. I mean, I call it the mindset piece. Right.
Yes.
So where we start, if someone walks in and they're like, nobody can help me, I'm unhelpable, there's no hope. Well, guess what direction this whole experience is going to go in?
It's going to go nowhere. Right? Your mind is going to direct your body. That's absolutely true. They're totally hooked together. So I'm going to shift gears. So tell me about how you get, so the idea of getting referrals is always good. But especially when you're doing, primarily online marketing, you almost always have to do some sort of marketing. You either have to trade your time, which is, doing all the social media stuff, or you have to trade your money and run a bunch of ads, whether it's Google or Facebook or whatever. So what do you do? Because a lot of times people will just, they'll start as a patient and then they don't really think about, well, you're actually a small business person in addition to being, a professional in delivering medical care.
Yeah, that's a hard one, because I think first of all of us who are in this profession, we want to help people, right? And sometimes I have even been at the point where my desire to help people meant that I was burning myself out because I was, there wasn't an equal exchange in what was happening. And the funny thing is this is what I teach our clients, right? We teach our clients about, putting themselves on the radar screen and taking care of themselves and all of that. And here I am, life kind of threw me the message that's like, hey, you've got to wake up yourself too. And it's hard as a small business owner because you're not just a practitioner, but you are now also managing a business. And most of us healthcare people, I do have an MBA, but my MBA is in leadership. It's not in all the other stuff. So it becomes this delicate balance of pulling all those pieces together, making sure that you're still taking care of yourself. And it's a juggle, right? And you need to rely on as many resources as you can to support you in that journey.
So what are the resources that you use for your marketing, for instance? Mm-hmm. So what do you primarily do?
Yeah. So we typically, when we were a brick and mortar office, we had office staff that assisted with a lot of these different things. These days, since we are virtual, we have an amazing virtual assistant team that assists us with our marketing, with, the ads that you see out there that we have, all the posts, even organizing and running the podcast and the podcast recordings and all the stuff that goes along with that, and have I perfected having enough distance from some of those things? No, I'm still learning, especially given our huge transition. So there are times when I'm on Canva trying to put together what our ad's going to look like, or I'm trying to figure out what is that language? How do we how do we attract the clients that we want to bring into our practice? So it is a constant evolution, but having a supportive VA team is really helpful. I have an amazing staff member who, I don't know where we would be without her. She's just extraordinarily gifted. She is able to interact and work with our clients in a way that everyone feels really supported and really taken care of. And that, I think, is really important. Having the right people on the boat to make the boat move forward is mandatory. Otherwise, the boat doesn't move forward.
Yeah. So I saw that you have some other people in your practice, Alice Croft and Kylie Woodworth and Carissa Rasmussen.
Well,
so what do all those people do?
Yeah, our team has changed since, and the website hasn't. So
and that's always tough to do.
Yeah, the team has changed and our website hasn't. So Alice was one of our. So we don't just do health programs, but there is a lot that we do in terms of what we call our Breakthrough Success Program. That is a program that's not dealing with your diet and your nutrition, and sometimes it's part of a client's overall program, but also dealing with the mindset, the subconscious, the unconscious behaviors, the self-sabotage, the internal dialogue. So we have programs like that as well. And Carissa is one of our main health coaches. And she's who I was talking about before, who is just taking care of our clients. We had other wonderful health coaches on our team. One of our health coaches passed away in a terrible accident a couple of years ago. As a business owner, that shakes you to the core in so many different ways. I think I'm still in part of that healing journey. We just passed a 2-year anniversary 2 days ago of her passing. And so having the right people there is important.
So what's next on the agenda for Dr. D?
What's next on the agenda? That's a good question. So we've been working on some new things. We have launched two things. One, since we have been fully remote, it was important to us to still maintain connection to our clients in a physical way. And so we have our retreats that we run. So we have an upcoming retreat that'll be here at the end of August, but our retreats are the theme is mindset, body freedom. So it's always about focusing on the mindset on day one, bringing in the important components of the body, and then really anchoring it in so you can take what you've learned and move it forward in your life. And each time we run that retreat, there's a different theme within those parameters. So that is something that it's amazing. It's amazing the experience, because even when we were in person, you're in person, you have an appointment, you're there for maybe an hour, and then you're done, then you're off in your own world. And in these retreats, we've got time to really hone in and create extraordinary change.
So where do you have them? So the one that's upcoming, where is it, at a resort, or do you have it?
Yeah. So the one that we have coming up in the end of October is going to be in Stony Point, New York. It is at a retreat facility. So we've had them on Long Island. We've had them in Pennsylvania. So we kind of change it up to see what is the next place that we're going to love and enjoy.
So do the people that you know in New York, do they think you have a Texas accent?
I don't think so. Do I have a Texas accent?
No, you don't. But it's funny how someone will move from one part of the country to another, and then they'll go back and they'll think, oh, your accent is gone, and now you have some other accent, but you go back to the other town and they think you still sound exactly like.
I don't know. I do use the word y'all a little more.
It's a very useful word. I used to live in the South, and y'all is a much better word than you guys. That's what we always said. You guys do this, or you guys that. And then when I said that in the South, they say, we're not guys.
It's short and sweet. Remember I said effective and efficient? Y'all is much faster, conveys the point.
Yeah.
So I really love
Okay,
it.
well, I think that about winds it up. I really appreciate you coming.
Thanks again for joining us on the Trustcasting Podcast. If you want to become the trusted authority in your market, you know what to do. Subscribe below to this channel and apply to be our next guest at trustcastingpodcast.com. We'll see you next time.